Hello, this is Ukraine 101, a podcast in which two Ukrainians have a frank conversation. In this episode, we'll talk about Ukrainian identity, Russian oppression in Crimean history, Ukraine's independence from the Soviet Union, and of course, we'll share our feelings as well. My name is Dana, my co-host is Karyna. We invite you to walk in our shoes for the next hour.
You're listening to Co-Station.
When people ask you, like, who are you? What's their first answer?
I think I'm lost first and foremost.
Existential crisis.
Ukraine is definitely up there. I think it depends on the context. If it's outside of work, then it's like, I'm Ukrainian. I'm doing a PhD here. Nice to meet you.
Okay, so Ukrainian is not number one thing that you are identifying as.
I don't think I rank them consistently, in my head. It is definitely a big identifier and the one I associate myself with. I probably wouldn't say that, if I met you, right, and then you ask me, who are you? And I'm like, I am Ukrainian. And you're like, oh, me too, duh.
Well, it depends, yeah. It depends on the context, I guess, yeah.
And who are you?
I'm always saying that I'm first and foremost Ukrainian, right? Because you're going to probably switch a few jobs throughout your life. Yeah, so for me, it definitely did become a realization that was very obvious to me personally. So for around 10 years, basically, when I, coming of age and, I'm 29 now. I am very Ukrainian. That's the number one thing. And then
Ukrainians are 29.
Oh, obviously.
In case you're wondering.
We just look different. But yeah, I'm 29. And so around 10, 12 years ago, I started realizing that I am Ukrainian. I was Ukrainian. And so
it's an important part, right? Because you grew up with some sense of identity, but it's not easily verbalizable. And I think also with Ukrainian history, right, it kind of tracks where Ukraine as a state was at times a bit lost in its image construction, like what it is and what it's trying to achieve. So I think in that sense, it rhymes relatively well with also the track record.
Yeah. Well, also for our viewers, a little bit of a context. So I'm 29, you're 28 almost?
27.
Oh, 27. Okay.
Oh, yes.
Sorry. Okay.
I still have half a year to check out.
Oh, okay. Well, good for you. I'm quickly approaching my 30, which is fine. I'm very proud of my age. Nonetheless, we are younger than the Ukrainian state, but just marginally, because if we think about the most recent Ukrainian state, we became independent in 1991. Maybe we could just talk for a second about that, how that happened, without going too much into geopolitics, because there was obviously a chain of different events, but more like what that resulted in terms of the identity and us separating from the Soviet empire that had been occupying the Ukrainian state and the Ukrainian people as it is.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, so because I definitely didn't bear witness to it myself, but coincidentally, I've just been talking to some of my friends who did witness it, right, and asking them hey, how was it, right? Because obviously you and I, we learned it from the books, I guess initially, or maybe your parents told you something like this. But chances are they didn't describe it in detail. They were just I went there, I voted, and it kind of worked out.
Voted. That's a very interesting part. Voted on?
A referendum for independence.
All right.
We'll come back to that. But because the stories I hear, right, they start actually a bit earlier. They start with people having a sense of identity as Ukrainians before the Soviet Union dissipates, right, before it disappears, and to a point where in the late 80s, right, it was for at least for my friends, right, it was causing friction where the propaganda machine would tell you you're Soviet, right, and they were like, but I am Ukrainian, right? My capital is here in Ukraine, in Kyiv, and not Moscow. Yeah, I think that's also something that's mentioned in the book that I guess we'll reference a couple of times today. Would you care to introduce it?
Well, I am worthless when it comes to introducing books because I completely forgot the author. It says Catherine
Metropolis? No?
Give me a second.
We'll
So,
check.
well, I would just really quickly look at it. It's called Burden of Dreams. So it is an excellent book. Warner.
Wonder?
Wanner. So we just spelled it for you, not because I have no idea how to pronounce it, but because like I spelled it, so you for sure can find it. But it's an excellent book, and I think what's peculiar about it is also that most of the observations were done during the Soviet, like
Right.
the
So
Soviet-
it also starts like before Ukraine formally gains independence, right?
Indeed.
And it also talks about how also within the Soviet state there was some sense of identity that was repressed, right? That was I mean, if you were too proud of it, if you're too loud about it, right, then you would be getting prosecuted. But people managed to maintain it to an extent. And I think she makes an interesting point that I never considered, right? And how the skepticism towards Soviet Union in Ukraine in particular accelerated significantly after the Chernobyl catastrophe disaster, how that undermined the trust in the state. And I mean, I was aware of the Chernobyl maybe context. I guess you know about it, but Chernobyl disasters or catastrophe is when a nuclear plant blew up, and like the incident itself is well known, right? But then there are some stories surrounding it, the Soviets forcing people to still go on like demonstrations and marches because it was 1st of May, not long after, and it was all kept hush hush.
Interesting that it was an actual explosion that then might have resulted in a kind of like literal,
Like metaphorical,
or like the metaphorical explosion, and that led to the disintegration of the Soviet Union. I remember taking this course in at the university when I was studying political science, and there was just one course that I would just never make it to. I don't remember, probably it was like a Friday morning lecture, and Thursday was the day that everyone went out, something like that.
Very Dutch.
And sorry?
Very Dutch.
Well, I was studying in Belgium, so but it was very Belgian of me. But yeah, the whole city or the whole town turned into a party town. And so I would just like never make it to those lectures, and I felt quite bad. But then I came to the exam, and one of the questions was like, what led to the
downfall?
The downfall, of the Soviet Union. And to me as a Ukrainian, it was just so obvious. I was like, well, the war in Afghanistan, that was just so stupid, and like, why would you even? Which was of course a decade before, and then Chernobyl, a bunch of things that the fall of the Berlin Wall, and then you just kind of see it as an almost inevitable thing, right? So then,
I mean, hindsight is 2020.
Yeah, of course, 2020. Excuse me, how we're traveling in time. Of course, to us it's like all inevitable, but like back then it was probably like a big, huge geopolitical event. Not to quote any dictators out there, but it's like, is it really the biggest geopolitical catastrophe in the history of the 20th century? Don't think so. Probably it was a geopolitical blessing.
Yes, a celebration of democracy and freedom that we had.
Finally, yeah. But I think also what's peculiar about this is that although the disintegration of the Soviet Union kind of was picking up pace and is pretty obvious as a kind of like done and dusted deal for us right now, there were a lot of Western politicians that also didn't believe that the entire demolition of the Soviet Union was the answer.
In particular, there's this one dude, lovely guy.
Chicken Kyiv.
That's him. Do you want to tell the story? I think it's like better than I do. So.
Oh, let's see. Okay, so I'll tell the story, and whatever
I'll
I miss,
interject if anything. Yeah.
Whatever I miss, you can.
Yes, go.
Okay, you can complete it with some spicy facts.
Absolutely. Yes.
But basically, not everyone was for the independence of former Soviet states, and Ukraine at that moment in time, it actually had the privilege of being a Soviet republic, which basically equated you to being kind of like a semi-state, quasi-state without really having any
Yeah, I guess puppet state is
Yeah.
the term that we use nowadays.
puppet state, indeed, without
Then
any.
I guess puppet states technically maintain independence, and I don't think that was really the case. Anyway,
Yeah,
so
it was kind of like very confederative. So it was technically we didn't have our own army or our own external
foreign affairs.
relations. Yeah, no foreign affairs, indeed. And then a lot of Western politicians, such as George Bush Sr. He was back then in the office. He traveled to Moscow and did whatever he had to do in there. It was, early 90s. And then he made a stopover in Kyiv to just kind of talk to the politicians over there and just say, guys, like by then, early 90s, people were already moving very rapidly in the direction of the independence movement. And it was already very much the case. And he just kind of said, you guys, let's just reform this whole thing, this monster called the Soviet Union, make it a little bit more democratic. Just like make sure that there's some.
Yeah, you don't make any rapid movements.
Indeed. So just kind of like full on Gorbachev, like, let's.
Hands behind your back.
Sorry?
Hands behind your back.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just like, we're just going to paint it all pretty and it doesn't matter that it's going to, remain all same old crap. And that's why he was named Chicken Kyiv, which was basically chickening out of, the idea of the Ukrainian independence. And Chicken Kyiv, for those who are out of context, we're happy to give you some context. It's a delicious Ukrainian dish if you are a meat eater. I don't know if there are vegan or vegetarian options available.
I mean, you can definitely do some sort of replacement, but it is a cutlet.
Well, it's like a chicken fillet, and then inside it there is a piece of butter, and then there's like a some kind of batter. So there's butter and batter to make it just like very funky. Oh my god, I'm actually getting hungry from talking about this. And then it's it's fantastic. You have to try it. It's very tender.
It's deep fried after.
Pan fried and deep fried and like little breadcrumbs. I don't know what that is called. Is there like Dutch they call it paneer meal?
Yeah, so I mean, you just submerge this whole shtick right into oil, right, and it becomes all crispy and.
Yeah, it's the ultimate comfort food. So then, chicken Kyiv in its original version is much more pleasant than chicken Kyiv when politicians deciding to adopt that.
George Bush executed.
Never
known for his cooking skills.
Yeah. Have you ever had it, like the original
Bush?
chicken
No,
Kyiv?
I never eaten.
You've never eaten any Bush? Oh, that's too bad.
Not a senior George Bush. I guess Bushes in general that happen.
Oh, that's a very, very good allegory. Yeah. Well, he was replaced by Clinton shortly after.
Yeah, but also I think there is another piece of story to that, right?
Yeah, of course. The spicy details. You've already started.
I'm not sure whether it's urban legend, but I recall the story that Bush was also providing some humanitarian aid, which in particular also included chicken fillets, and that's how it also stuck.
I think that might be an urban legend.
Could be, yeah.
Because if you think about like things that are usually provided as a sort of humanitarian aid, usually it's like non-perishable foods like grain and oil and things like that. At least that's what Ukraine provides to the rest of the world, crisis after crisis.
Yes, I think I know some cases when it was also perishables, but it could have been also pre-legend. I guess that's why it stuck with
Maybe
me.
they were canned.
Yeah.
Then maybe they, yeah.
Oh, I mean, can you imagine like a cutlet, right? But it's canned, like you just open it, you take it out like a hot dog, but then it's submerged in water. I guess you wouldn't want that.
I don't know if that is appetizing at this point.
Yeah, no, I was trying to imagine like how do you make it into something that's going to be preserved for a long while?
Yeah, the thing is, I think anything that's meant to be crispy is not going to be like faring very well in any sort of liquid. But we might get back to
like a hydrogel, like you submerge into hydrogel.
I could tell you about all the things I ate in Ukraine. They were fantastic. There are power outages in Ukraine right now, and businesses continue to just like everyone has a generator standing outside of their restaurant/cafe. So it's all the small businesses are surviving that way because there are power outages, and so the power generators are basically making businesses survive. And so you walk in and you say, hey, what can I get? What can I not get? And they have blackout menus that just basically, spare the effort for the waiters to like list all the things that are makeable. and feasible in the power outage times. And so you can get like pretty much anything. You can get a good coffee. You can definitely get a cocktail with ice in it, ice cubes. So it's fantastic. And then I had some buckwheat, which is, we are very proud of buckwheat in Ukraine. I don't know how you can not love buckwheat. It's so good. And I had buckwheat with bit of chicken in it, but it also had a version with halloumi, which I think you would appreciate it. And it was like with this fantastic creamy sauce of some kind, and it was so good. and then I also had a lot of a Georgian khachapuri. So you go to Ukraine for Georgian food, right? So what is your like?
No, I was just thinking for a second that you said blackout menu, and this reminded me of a blackout poetry, which is like a different thing. But so a concept of blackout poetry? No, I mean you take a text and then you take like a black marker and you black out some words till you end up with a poem. And in that case, the blackout refers to actually the process of blacking out, right? But your blackout menu, I mean, I guess you could also black out the items on it that are not available, but it's a different blackout.
Wow.
So
So how about we take the Burden of Dreams, the book we were referencing, and we play blackout poetry next time.
Sure, yeah, sounds good.
But let's make sure it's not like it's a book that we can mess up.
Yeah.
Because I've been borrowing it from someone. But yeah, so.
I mean, it's also, so you return it and it's a piece of art now. Yeah. And we also record it, and then it's also a performance piece.
Oh, yeah, fantastic. Yeah. And that's, anyways, let's go. Let's get back to the vote. So you mentioned the vote. Some of your older friends went to the voting booths. I need to ask my parents whether they voted. I'm not sure they did.
Well, I mean, we were discussing the turnout was about 60%, like 30 million out of 52.
It was well, yeah, I think. The 52 million at that moment in time was, of course, the total population of Ukraine. So it couldn't have possibly been that, but it's a very good one. So we just for the sake of accuracy, we're going to bring you all the right numbers. So the number of registered voters was 37 million and a bit, and the number of total voters that turned up was 31.8 million. So actually,
right. So it is about
84%, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
so 31.8 divided over 37.8.
So
yeah.
You do math, girl.
Yeah, I can't. So
I mean, you're better than I am. So
well, it's that's
I am like 37 is about 40, right? 31 is about 30.
That's
three quarters.
That works. That's 3/4. Yeah. In either case, I think that's quite a good
it's a good
turnout.
job,
Yeah. Because I like if we think about any democratic elections in countries where there's social media and from every possible source, people are encouraged to go and vote. There's so much money poured into that. I'm sure that was not the case in,
No, yeah, I mean, I don't think the sort of the media rate and the ads were all encouraging you to go vote. I mean, I'm sure there was something, but now thinking about it, it could be that the turnout at the referendum was to an extent induced, right, by the habit of the people in the Soviet Union to go vote, even though that vote didn't matter, right? But you were still conditioned to go and at least show up. So that might have played a role, which I mean makes it even more impressive, right? That you as a Soviet person, right, like, you were conditioned to do this as a Soviet citizen, and you go there and you say, "Fuck you, Soviet Union, we're out."
Yeah, I see. Yes, there's. I think this is definitely special. I think I never really even paid much attention to how the fact of the Ukrainian independence kind of just came into being. To me, it was always like, well, like everyone just kind of wanted it, but I never knew exactly how that happened. So for our listeners, on the 1st of December 1991, Ukrainians, which at that point was 37 million registered voters, turned up and cast this vote for the independence of Ukraine, which was basically, very much, I think it was a shock to the, whoever was supporting the kind of preserving the Soviet Union and just whoever was still believing that was going to work, because if you can imagine any average citizen in the late 1980s, early 1990s, that just kind of like starts to get this idea of independent Ukraine. I mean, again, it was not a mainstream idea, but nonetheless, people cast their vote,
You're
and that
also
was
not bad, right?
yeah, and it was a democratic vote. And for those who are wondering, if you're asking, what about Crimea? We looked this up.
Well, yeah.
Do you want to guess what the turnout rate was?
Well, I mean, the last time we looked up, we couldn't find turnout rates for Crimea specifically, did we?
Oh yeah, right. Sorry, what what was the I think on average it was more or less the same across the country.
Mhm. I would be
Um
surprised because I mean, if the cause is the one that I am hypothesizing it is, then it wouldn't differ too much between the regions.
no, and it indeed did not, from at least from what I can see right now. I do see that oh, actually, yeah, in Crimea there was no vote percentage of 42%. Well, which also tells us a few things, right? So, the overwhelming majority of the Crimea population at that point was ethnic Russians. But how did they get there? Oh. Are they also the indigenous population of the Crimea? No, they're not. So, but we will definitely talk about this in a different podcast. The thing is, they had their chance of turning up to a democratic vote, and the 42% was a no-show. But then, by the mere logic, 58 did turn up, and they cast their vote. It does look like there are 54% of these mostly ethnic Russians still voted for the independence.
Yeah.
So
Though I think by that point, Crimea also a few of the Crimean Tatars also managed to move back there by that time, right? Because they've been trying to. Well, that's the event, right? How Russians got there, the ethnic cleansing, the genocide, the mass forced move of Crimean Tatars, Kremlin to, like deep Russia, Kazakhstan.
Yep. Uzbekistan, a lot of them in different Stan republics of the then Soviet Union.
Yeah, and then Russia sort of brought its military there to, I guess to secure the hold on the region.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because if you think about this, of course, Crimea, for anyone who is interested in geopolitics, has always been a very interesting region to kind of to possess, to have as part of their possessions. So that's why there were a lot of wars between the Ottomans, the Brits, and the Russians already throughout the course of I believe as early as 18th and the 19th century, and then in the 20th century, it became just basically a major military base, which we'll definitely get back to. But the bottom line here, folks, is that if there was a majority of the Russian population in Crimea, which it was the case in the early 1990s, and they had their chance of voting to stay with the Soviet Union, aka modern-day Russia, well, they could, but
choose not to.
They chose not to, and therefore the Crimean Peninsula, chose to stay with the independent Ukraine, and 54%. It was admittedly the lowest rate in the entire, in the entire kind of map of the country, but it's still 54%. So that's how democracy works. I think also about another piece of blatant Russian propaganda, and that is, of course, the kind of Donetsk and Luhansk.
Oh yeah.
And you're from Luhansk?
Yeah, I'm from Luhansk. I was born there. My parents, both of them, were born there. I think my grandparents, some of them were from around Luhansk, from Luhansk region, but some of them also moved. So I guess 2 generations and a little bit. Depends which branch of the family you take.
Look at that. That was special, I think, in the Soviet times, that people would move a lot and kind of settle in the same spot. Everyone I knew was kind of like their families would travel, not
not
people my age, but like
that's also, I think, part of the idea, right? Of I don't know if it has a proper name, right? But sort of military displacement. There's a story of the First World War, and my grandpa fighting in it. And then Austria, right, it was fighting on two fronts. It was fighting, I think, the Italians, right, on one side and the Russians on the other side. And then the Russian Empire, right? And the Russian Empire obviously had a lot of Ukrainians in the army. And then the Austrians, they decided not to put the Ukrainians so the parts of land they were occupying, there were some Ukrainians on it. And they decided to not make those Ukrainians fight against Russian Empire, but instead send them to Italy.
Italy, yeah.
And that's
Interesting. I heard about this in a podcast once. So this is very interesting to hear, like, that there is a like a very personal
not a living
example.
witness. I think my grandpa is dead by now, but yes, that was the case. Was it grand? I'm not sure whether it was grandpa or grandpa. One of them. Right, and then in the case of the Soviet Union, it also strikes me as also a tactic to kind of disconnect you from your family, right, from your land, from your history, right, and instead make you go someplace else, sort of in a way make you truly a Soviet person, which is disconnected from the roots, right, and it's just sort of floating around part of the system.
Well, I think in this book, Burden of Dreams, I mean, I just kind of skimmed through it, so I hadn't really had the chance.
You were both very informed.
Yeah, we tried, right? But this is also about a lot about our personal experiences and our love for buckwheat and chicken Kyiv and whatever else people want to learn about. Because if you want to like cut and dry history, like this is not the place where you gotta be. But I think one of the things that the author Catherine is referring to is she was traveling a lot through the entire Soviet Union. So I think she went to a lot of different places, but Ukraine, as far as I understood, was a major kind of focal point for her. And so
she was sort of a centerpiece of her study, at least in this case.
Yeah. And from what I understand, she's an excellent scholar of the Ukrainian studies in Harvard. So she's like very distinguished. I'm sure there are more things to check out.
The book was published at the Carnegie Mellon, but she might have well been at Harvard.
Yeah. Well, that's probably you're better informed on that one.
Yeah, I was just looking at the sort of full cover, second cover of the book. So something there. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah. Sorry, I was thinking about this whole kind of uprooting and like the Soviet identity, like as it was kind of like achieved through this politics of bleaching of the national identities and just kind of like mixing them in a kind of supra national, like nationality-less mix.
Nationless.
Yeah, nationless, where everyone was just kind of like equal. But we know very well that not everyone was equal, and there was one dominant language.
Some animals are more equal than others.
Oh, this was the typical Animal Farm. I think Animal Farm was actually written as an allegory to the Soviet Union. But anyway, so then we're reading about the experiences of this person who was traveling through Soviet Union first-handedly, and she said, what I found peculiar is that there were no people that would identify themselves as Soviet citizens. So people would like, when you'd ask them like, who are you? They would be like, oh, I'm, whatever, Ukrainian, I'm a Uzbek. And there was only one man who said that he was Soviet. So out of well, I don't know how large this sample group was, but I think if I had asked my mom or my dad, and they were like young adults at the time when the Soviet Union was nearing its collapse, if I had asked them, like, do you identify as a Soviet citizen, they would probably like laugh because they knew that it was like one big kind of like smoke screen and lies, and like nobody really cared about the Soviet identity. So it was not like people were walking around waving their little Soviet flag saying, oh yeah, I'm such a proud Soviet citizen.
It also depends on the generation, right? Because your parents, right, they would be around 18, I suppose.
Yeah, around that age. So they are both from 1965.
Right, so they went through the formative year during the Glasnost. And I think if you look slightly older people, right, then you would have the Soviet identity etched a bit more into them. Though, I mean, it's also interesting history there, right? where during World War II, Soviet states actively allowed and promoted national identities because that was a way to encourage people to fight. We can come back to that at some point, but just a piece of history that Ukrainian poets there was a little bit of renaissance there, right, where they enjoyed like 4 years of freedom or relative freedom, right, and then there was back to the usual.
That was indeed the reason why we have some amazing pieces such as the Alexander Dovzhenko writing, right? That was basically written in those years. But yes, definitely. So when it served the purpose, right? Because also I think the moment when the Soviet Union came about, as long as the national identities served a specific purpose, there was encouragement of like national. Well, I wouldn't say nationalistic movements, but like
national pride to an extent, national identity.
Yeah, national identities were indeed supported as the Soviet Union tried to become the kind of the antagonist of the Russian Empire, but at the end of the day, it's just kind of like morphed into the new Russian Empire.
I guess so I wouldn't say morph because morph implies that it just sort of happened naturally, right? Well, reality is also like a very clear breaking point. Like at some point, it's like, no, fuck you. We're building the new Russia, and you better buckle up.
Yep. Which is also, why to a lot of people it is a shocking to actually learn that Stalin was a ethnic Georgian. But essentially, if there hadn't been a Russian fascist state to enable him, he wouldn't have ever been able to achieve what he wanted. And from, I think...
the ultimate Soviet person.
Yeah, the ultimate, and he even changed his last name. I mean, Stalin is not a Georgian last name. And so a lot of Russians are just kind of hiding behind this notion of like, oh, but he was Georgian in the end of the day. But like the entire, bloody machine that enabled him to get there and...
the same way that Hitler was Austrian.
Oh, right. Yeah, that like matters so much, right? Like that Hitler was Austrian. Yeah, but at the end of the day, like this kind of tokenism was also present to a very noticeable extent with Stalin as well. Like he would, gather guests at his place and make this entire display of like Georgian hospitality, and there would be songs in Georgian and a lot of Georgian food. But the moment when he was just kind of like when it was getting too much and people were like reminding him too much about his Georgian identity, he would be just like getting very exasperated. Sorry?
Off with your head.
Yeah. Polonium tea for you, Tovarish Trotsky. Trotsky made it to Mexico, but then I know that he's definitely...
This is such a melange, right, of like different eras. There's Trotsky here, there's Polonium tea, right, there's Stalin. It's like all comes together now.
Well, this is the mushmash. If my...
this is not a dig. I'm honestly enjoying this. So.
Oh, okay, good. we're meant to. Yeah, but I think so this is kind of like, let's pull back a little bit. So we were talking about the Soviet identity, right? That it was it was a thing. It was not a thing later on.
But I think there is a topic that connects well to it, right? Because we're just talking about Second World War, right? And Second World War established some sort of world order and established UN, right? And it's brought this idea of international law that, will guide us through times when people are confused, right? When there is uncertainty. And some people were naive enough to believe that it would work. And Ukrainians are certainly guilty of that.
I think it's frustrating on a lot of different levels. One of them is that the UN was kind of opposed to the League of Nations, which had kind of proven itself completely useless in the face of the Second World War. And so they were like, we're going to build something that's not going to be League of Nations. And then
it's going to be not useless. Look at how it turned out.
And it's a very interesting thing, because when you're trying to like establish your identity based on something you're not, I think that's also like very, very interesting experiment.
Good for you to have a starting point. Poor job on choosing one.
Yep, exactly. And then that's how the Security Council was formed. China was not Communist China at that moment in time. It was actually a very different political formation, but fine. We are not going to go into the weeds of that. I think it is indeed a frustrating part, because that's kind of like where the international law starts to get shaped, morph. No, sorry, it was of course shaped by the politics of the post World War, post Yalta conference, which I guess you can look it up what that was, but that was basically like the dividing the spheres of influence, and that's where also the Soviet Union became an actual superpower. So prior to the Second World War, Soviet Union was just looked at as kind of like, oh, whatever, it's a largely
weird thing. Yeah,
agricultural.
it's somewhere there. We can trade with it.
Right. Yeah. So it's like it was a very like it was basically a laggard in the international world order, and after the Second World War, this country, prison of peoples, got lifted into this status of a superstate, and
Though funny enough, right? When the UN was forming, Soviet Union advocated for Ukraine to be included separately as a member. So yeah, our UN membership stretches back to the formation.
I think I once also read about it.
But that's the sole reason for that is so that Soviet Union would get not one but two votes, right? Or I'm not sure whether the same thing applied to other sort of countries that suppose appeared when the Soviet Union disappeared. But technically Ukraine is, I think, one of the founding members of the UN. So yay.
Yay. I mean, totally helped us not. Yeah, but I think that's where the international law is kind of continuing its very complex way of coming into being, and that's where we were kind of also thinking like, oh, okay, let's see, maybe this is going to help prevent wars and conflicts in the future. I do recall some examples when the UN, like early in its days,
impotent?
No, it was like, so
Wow,
they were
impressive.
like, they were not just a bunch of like people saying that they were deeply concerned, which is how I know them now. I just don't remember where they kind of showed themselves.
I wouldn't know.
Well, yeah, but it was back in the day. So I think that's also one of the things, right? It's the institutional memory. It was like the memory of like why you came into being. I think in the first couple of generations after like something as existential as World War II, and you do remember first-handedly like why we don't want this to happen ever again, right? Because after kind of like a few more generations, it becomes a little bit more of like, maybe never again, but maybe also not. I don't know. I'm not really sure. I just want to get my paycheck. Do Google their salaries? They're wild. They're not paying any taxes. Hashtag no taxes. Yeah. So what was I talking about? So like, yeah, it became pretty useless, and I think one of the frustrating things to us as Ukrainians. Should I already say? Should I drop the ball?
I mean,
should I drop?
Well, I mean,
am I going for the nuclear
you are exactly
option?
not going to drop the bomb.
Oh, this hurts on so many levels. This is the nuclear options option of this podcast, and that is the example of how the international law can, I think, exhibit a lot of wishful thinking when it comes to us as Ukrainians, but also show just how much this kind of unwillingness to dissolve something as monstrous as the Soviet Union, right? And then the unwillingness from Western politicians to grant Ukraine any kind of agency and everything that comes with it, and like recognize its sovereignty, not just on paper, but like in real life. That's, my friends, is the exemplary case that is shown in Budapest Memorandum. Budapest Memorandum is... Sorry, no, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was thinking, let's make it perhaps more concrete, right? That, well, you've heard the story of Chicken Kyiv. And, I mean, Ukraine, I think at that point, was housing about a third of the Soviet nuclear arsenal. And when the Soviet Union started shaking, right, everybody was extremely worried. Everybody, meaning Bush, sort of, oh no, but how is it going to be, right? We don't want another nuclear state, and maybe we'll just pressure them into it, right? And I guess the talks happened sometime. I think there was in 1991 already there was some kind of START agreement, right? That was already trying to limit the spread and the use of nuclear weapons, also for Ukraine, right?
The Lisbon Treaty. Yeah, indeed.
But then the big thing happened in 1994, if I'm not mistaken. And that was the agreement by which Ukraine was giving up its nuclear arsenal. I think it was moved almost. I think the whole thing was just moved to Russia, and instead we were promised. Which good? It was not security guarantees, but security assurances. Yes.
The thing is, do you know the funny part to this?
Yeah, go ahead. I love this story. So
okay, my hands are itching. Where do I start from? Well, so the thing is, the thing with the security assurances is that the English version of the document of the Budapest Memorandum mentions security assurances, and it was pulled in such a way that it wouldn't have to go through the U.S. Senate, for example. Senate. I don't know how to pronounce that. Sorry, I have no idea. So and that was basically the lazy option, right? Because invoking the Senate would have meant a lot more work, most likely, and so therefore it's assurances, which is like somewhat like, which is why words matter, right? And in the Ukrainian version of this document, it is guarantees. So guarantees is a little bit more solid, and then and security guarantees / assurances are actually stated in no uncertain terms. It just basically prohibits any act of a military aggression against Ukraine by the...
Yeah, so but these are different things, right? I think there are 6 points to it, right? One of, I think the first and foremost is the respect, right, and the support of Ukraine independence and territorial integrity, right? And then the security assurances, they come a bit later. So they're not like sort of one big lump.
I bet there are paragraphs, and they might come in numerical order. But it's a very good note. The thing is, what are the parties to the Budapest Memorandum?
Yeah, right. So we had the US, we had Russia, we had the UK. I think those are 3 primary ones, and then also France and China joined a bit later, but on weird terms.
Yeah, weird terms. So very vague. But the fact that Russia promised to respect Ukraine's borders and Ukraine's territorial integrity in exchange for Ukraine giving up its nukes is infuriating. I wake up every morning and I think everyone needs to know. Budapest Memorandum got signed 3 days after I was born, which makes it a matter very dear to me. We both are Sagittarius. Which is why it's like...
do you know the rising and the sun of the Budapest Memorandum?
No, that's
we'll look into that later.
I don't believe in horoscopes.
How dare you?
I know, like let's look it up. No, but it is in fact like it shows another way in which the international order is completely impotent, and it sets a very good precedent for why other nuclear states, including the ones that are a little bit shaky, such as Iran, will never want to give up their nukes anymore, because they're like, well, look at Ukraine. I mean, it didn't turn out well for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's also kind of ridiculous how the Ukraine giving up its nukes, right, was seen as a great example, right, and how things should be done all the while, right? So you have, I guess, Yeltsin was signing the memorandum from Russia's side, but Putin, who was already sort of adjacent to power, I'm not sure whether it was 1994 exactly, but sort of he definitely came to be like connected, right, to Yeltsin a bit later. I think by 1999 it was in full swing. And I suppose he must have been in the inner circle for a little while by that point. Anyway, he was not supportive of it to begin with, right? He stated repeatedly on record how he was not cool with Budapest memorandums guaranteeing Ukraine territorial integrity, including Crimea, right? And the use of nukes was like... So the skepticism in Russia towards Budapest memorandum, right, like, or respect for it, was always lacking. And I think in 2004 2004 and 2011, there were also 2 instances when he stated that it's all bollocks and we are planning on respecting it. And then sort of that kind of gives you the context, right? And that's why I wanted to connect it with the Second World War, right? How there was this dreamy image of rule-based world order, right? And how there's international law, and we'll all agree and we'll be nice, and we will play by the rules. And then you have this thing, right, which says in no uncertain terms that Ukraine is a state and we should not attack it. And then fast forward, 20 years, right? And it all just goes out of the window.
Yeah, because it's 2014 is indeed where Russia invaded Ukraine for the first time. So we're in the Netherlands, and today's 21st of July. 4 days ago, we marked the 10 years since the MH17 flight was shut down. So which makes basically what someone said the other day, which completely blew my mind. So the amount of Dutch citizens killed in the Ukraine-Russia war, or Russo-Ukrainian war as we call it, is actually third highest after Ukraine and Russia, right? Because there are 196 Dutch citizens that I will never also stop talking about, just how awful this is. And that the international community said, oh no, so there are European and Australian and whatnot citizens killed in this terrible crime, but whatever.
Accident.
Accident. Oh my God! A super comprehensive investigation proved with the most compelling evidence that it was definitely shut down by Russia already in 2016. You should see things that, Dutch foreign ministries posting on their social media accounts saying, oh, this, plane, it crashed. Like, how did it crash? Like, what's matter, dude? Assurances, guarantees, hello? And so it is really infuriating for me because 300 innocent people were killed blatantly in 2014, which was 20 years after Budapest Memorandum was signed. Which is already 10 years ago. So it's a monstrous amount of time that we are just allowing this entire, world order to kind of go on the incline. And we are hoping that things like, Russia invading Ukraine is not going to stimulate more nuclear proliferation. Well, of course it will. Whoever has nukes,
gonna stop you.
Whoever has nukes will say, well, I'll never give them up because look what happened to Ukraine. And in fact, Bill Clinton, which, by the way...
Fuck you, Bill Clinton.
Thank you. He said he was regretful about it.
Fuck you. So
yeah, he was in 2023. He said I was such a whatever.
I have personal stake in this. I am terrified. It's you could have foreseen these consequences. You look at Russia, right, and it never changed its ways. And then you have potential ally, right? But instead, you follow exactly the footsteps of your predecessor, and you chicken out exactly the same fucking way that he did.
Chicken Kyiv 2.0. So, I think I wrote a few things on this one, right? It's just, other countries also denying us the sense of statehood, where we really say. So it was, if you think about the timeline. So just again, we've been jumping places a little bit, which we are very sorry about not. But if you think about this, Ukraine votes independence in 1991. It is kind of asked in hey buddy, in good faith, can you please give up your nukes in 1994? And Ukraine says, well, okay, but will you please? And
it's also a good acting out, because there was uncertainty in it, right? And I don't know sort of to what extent you read up on the story, but so the story is that also
depends on what uncertainty. There were a lot of uncertainties. So
but Kravchuk was also hesitant, right? And so also hesitant about particularly the wording of guarantees insurances.
Asterisk, the then president of Ukraine, Kravchuk.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think, and I mean, there's a lot of skepticism towards him also in Ukraine, right? Because I think he was the representative of the Communist Party, and before that, I think he was the secretary or the first secretary of the Communist Party in Ukrainian.
But so was Yeltsin for Russia. Yeah, they both belonged to the communist camp.
Yeah, but sort of there is, right. That's the difference between choosing your president to be kind of the head of this power structure, right, and the vassal of the power structure.
Yeah, well, there were uncertainties. So I think something that's worth mentioning is while the independence movement was already actively brewing in Ukraine, so 1990 was kind of like the really the breaking point, I would say. A lot of intelligentsia was for giving up the nukes. So they would like publicly speak about it. They would talk about why it's important to be willing to give up on the nukes. A lot of nuclear warheads were already moved to Russia, the strategic ones. The tactical nukes were still kept in some Ukrainian cities. But I mean, Russia already kind of like sensed that that it smells like
Teen spirit.
like Soviet Union is gonna be no more. So they started moving some of their big warheads into Russia. But like there were a lot of tactical nukes, right? And that could have been technically now. Like imagine anyone attacking a nuclear state. I mean, I don't know. Like I don't know.
I mean, so I guess that's the reason why you're angry, why I am angry about this in the end, is because this is the thing that enabled Russia. I mean, obviously, sort of there are plenty more, and fuck you, Angela Merkel. But this was not on the straw, right? I mean, this is kind of the final stop, right? Or the final reason to not attack someone is because they might strike back and you'll not have a good time. This was weaseled out of our hands.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of repercussions for the rest of the world, right? So I think I said it like only about 5 times by now, but like everything that this so the Lisbon Treaty, in which Ukraine basically said that it was going to be a good actor and is going to act in good faith, whatever. It was basically the precedent for having the Budapest Memorandum signed. That was like the entire idea behind that was like less nukes. And it came from this fear of like, Soviet Union disintegrating and creating more states that will have nuclear capacity, and Ukraine really acted in good faith. So whatever it did have as a purpose has now been defeated, and now there are going to be likely more nukes. And as we know, also there are some, political players out there and states out there that are building their own nuclear capacity, saying, nah, we aren't. But
And
we know
honestly,
for a
right? I
fact.
mean, sort of looking at it from Ukrainian perspective, I can't blame them. And like, how can you? I think also, like every country on Earth, right, that has potential of being attacked by anyone, really, right? I don't have any doubt, right? They're contemplating, oh, maybe we should like reconsider.
Yeah, and I think also a very interesting part to that is that Ukraine's capacity to have nuclear weapons did not just stem from the fact that Russia just kind of like was like, oh yeah, here it is. Like
Here's some.
we actually produced our own, so we had the capacity of doing that. There were a few different factories. Do you produce nukes in the factories? Kent Chicken Kyiv, and right next to it.
It's a craft workshop. Produce in singular exemplars. You should taste the flavors. Oh yeah, the way it disintegrates in
The
your mouth.
enriched uranium, yeah. But like speaking of that, because it is complex technology, right? It usually requires a lot of components. I wouldn't know honestly, but I know that in the city that is basically the closest major city to where I come from, Kryvyi Rih, Dnipro is the city I'm referring to. It used to be a closed off city that you wouldn't be able to enter really because of the capacity to build, aircraft of all kinds, aerospace engineering, being very well developed there, and they were developing nuclear warheads in there. And I'm so proud of my region. Also, further, in the region, there is Zhovty Vody, which is also just like a no-name town for most of us. But there was, there's capacity for mining enriched uranium or like enriching uranium there. I'm not really an expert in nuclear physics, but I do know that they were proudly made in Ukraine. So it wasn't even like this colonial stuff kind of happening to us there, where Russia just says, well, you're our westmost borders, therefore should anything happen, here are a few warheads, we were actually producing our own. So technically, we also had to destroy our entire capacity for producing them after we signed the memorandum. And a lot of other bad things happened, which basically leads us to the conclusion here that the international law is
Just sucks
it
ass.
just sucks. Wow, it's
Yeah, I mean, I think by now it's becoming increasingly clear, right? That it's just the rule of the strongest, and if you don't have the muscle, right, then none of the laws, none of the rules matter, and your allies will be sucking on whoever it is they want to, and they will do fuck all as long as you can't force them to sort of stand behind your back.
if we could go back in time, stab you in the back. If you could,
Well,
so, sorry, I was getting carried away there.
that is roughly what ended up happening.
Yeah, what would you say, like, in your opinion, what would have been a good alternative to the Budapest Memorandum? Would it be like forcing the U.S. to actually commit to like guarantees and like force it
Yeah, I
to?
was thinking. So I don't know to what extent, Ukrainian politicians at that time would be ready to join NATO, but would have been hella cool to do that at that time.
Spoiler: they were
Yeah.
not very keen. No, they
Yeah,
were
no,
not.
no.
No.
At the same
Was
time, right,
NATO
sort of-
keen on Ukraine though? That's also a good question.
Yeah, but I mean that is that is, I suppose, in the modern world as concrete of a security guarantee as you get. I mean, sure, right? So you might not be part of NATO, but having the security guarantees as a NATO state member, right? That would have been an alternative. But also, again, like just acting in good faith, right? And then not being a sucker throughout the 2010s. And then also after the invasion, right? Where like every state almost in EU, instead of doing the right thing, right? It was like, oh no, Russia, boohoo, I guess we'll keep trading.
Angela Merkel.
Fuck you, Angela Merkel. Yeah, feel free.
I'm trying not to swear in the podcast because I'm thinking what Timothy Snyder swear in his podcast. I'm always thinking like, what would Timothy do?
What would Jesus do?
Well, he is practically, the man, the legend. He's the moral example. I think one thing that I personally would like to convey this thought of like, I don't think it would have been right for Ukraine to continue being a nuclear state. It's just that the deal that we actually made could have been much better, because even the amount of compensation for, cutting the nukes in half, it looks really sad. Like, you should look up how it
I
looks.
think it was
I have to cry. The reason why I cry a
700.
lot is because I look at those pictures of nukes being cut in half.
Oh,
Sorry,
no,
you were
my
saying
my
something?
baby.
Oh no, this is so painful. Sorry, go ahead.
No. So I think the monetary compensation, I think, amounted to about 700 mil in modern US dollars, right? Like in present year, which is like nothing.
And the potential, so I looked it up and I wrote it down. The potential was it's actually
Let me
not
put
written
on
here.
my grandma glasses.
The potential was 10 billion.
Mm-hmm.
10 billion. And at that point in time, the entire external debt of the Ukrainian state was like 17 billion, something like that. So more than half of your external debt is gone if you are able to do a good deal, which is why, folks, you should learn how to do good negotiations, which we did not at that moment in time. But I don't want to only blame Ukraine for not being a good negotiator, because it was also abusive from other parties,
I don't think that the current sort of situation on the ground is beneficial really to any of the sort of, it's beneficial to the US, it's beneficial to the EU, to the UK, right? If we're talking about the initial assignees, right, then it'd be
No.
UK and the US, right?
No, they completely messed everything up.
So that also means that the deal they signed sucked also for them. And I mean, I guess maybe I'm more pessimistic in this regard, right? Because sort of your idea of a better deal involves like just higher compensation, right? Strong guarantees. Maybe I am devoid of all hope for international law, right? But my idea of a better deal is just say fuck you, keep the nukes, and then carry on.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, yeah, we also had that option, right? We could have just done that because we had been recognized as an independent state by then. The thing is, where do you really get as a kind of like a state that does have nukes while the rest of the international community is asking you, like, can you please not? You become Iran or you become North Korea. And
You may, right? But so it definitely puts a stain on your relationship, right? But there, it leads to the same outcomes as with Iran or North Korea, right? I think that's a question that is a bit more open to interpretation.
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also it's a matter of like looking at the other two states that were also signees to the treaty, which is Belarus and Kazakhstan. Both, had they maybe made a bit of a agreement with Ukraine to just like kind of try to broker better conditions for all three of them, because it's a lot harder to kind of coerce three states
Unions.
to. Yeah, exactly. That's why we need to. I was looking for the word. Yeah, it's like a little trade union, but I think it's it all comes down to in times of these moral choices, things like security guarantees. You cannot really go for a half option. Like you cannot be like half honest. Like there are just no options like that. You really have to be decisive with these things. Because we also see right now that indecisiveness and half options, they're just kind of like, I wouldn't say they provoke Russia, but like Russia is definitely disrespecting.
I think they enable Russia.
Yeah, I mean, indeed, the half measures, like half of like, yeah, we'll give you like the weapons, but you cannot strike Russia. Like, it's like, it's the same. It's Budapest Memorandum 2.0, which I hope, I always say it in our podcast. If there's one idea you have to get out of this podcast, is that
Give
half
Ukraine
measures.
nukes. Oh, sorry.
Half measures don't work. Give Ukraine nukes. I wouldn't be surprised that if like after 4 years Ukraine is like, oh yeah, actually.
Here are biologically modified bees. They will sting your ass. You step.
The gray bees. Yeah, well, you know how it goes. That
Great because they're camouflaged.
Yeah, I was referring to Kurkov.
Yeah.
It gets pretty trippy. I'm just telling you. But yeah, I think this is a fair way to end this, unless
No, I think it's a good scope.
no. Well, before I do the clap, I just wanted to remind you, if you're enjoying this, and also if you're not, frankly.
Wait, before I go there, shall we just kind of wrap up? Try to sum up what should you take home for today?
Yeah, of course.
What did you cover?
Chicken Kyiv is worth trying.
Absolutely, yes. Bush is worth hating on. So is Clinton.
And Merkel.
And Merkel.
Please don't forget Merkel.
Yeah.
I think.
We need diversity in our hate pool.
Well, love it.
I guess it's not a very nice thing to say, but I think a more honest outlook on international law is just more truthful, right, to the state of the world as it is, right? And if you are sort of under some illusion that this world operates by the rule of law on the states, sort of on an interstate level, right, then I guess it's an opportunity to look into some history, see how that panned out before.
Yeah, and I think definitely, as we are progressing in a few more generations, we'll probably have to change before anything really happens to the UN. But I think it's a good example of how we could learn from this and try to look at these institutions and to make sure that they actually don't become the enabler of the evil, because right now we see also Russia being part of the Security Council of the UN, and same goes for all these treaties that are basically trying to denuclearize the world, and then result basically in the opposite effect. So yeah, I think there's a lot of work out there for whoever is directly involved in the shaping of these things, which we are probably not as citizens, but it's good to.
Mean?
Well, it's probably good to just kind of.
Well, I mean, get out there and vote.
Go out there and vote. People in Ukraine voted in the 1990s, which was wild times. And also one thing, very importantly, before I forget, to wrap up, you're from Luhansk. I just looked up the vote as it was cast. Yeah, for independence of Ukraine, Luhansk and Donetsk both were above 80%. So whenever Russia says, "Oh, Luhansk and Donetsk, they really wanted to join Russia," don't believe them because they voted for the Ukrainian independence. You can look it up. It's all on Wikipedia. We are not going to leave you any sources because you got to learn how to Google, buddy. It is 2024. Okay.
All right, yeah.
We're going to wrap up?
Yes, I think that's
We're going to wrap up and remind you to, whether you enjoyed it or not, as I already started saying, please give us a like and subscribe. And
Please enjoy.
please enjoy. Please try to enjoy it. Put it in like 3.0 speed or something. I don't know, like take drugs.
Yeah, I mean, you
listen to
can
this.
make my voice sound funny. I don't mind that. If that means you're gonna listen to this, more power to you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how it's gonna sound. Okay, please like, subscribe. This is Co-Station.
Cool station.
And have a blessed day.
Good one. Yeah. Cheers.